Welcome to United by Trucks. Today we're back with another episode of All Laid Out where Mike Howe is going to show us how to get this GSI chassis rolling. What's up, Mike? All right, guys, so we're here with Mike.
Yeah.
Mike, say what's up.
What's up, Mike?
What are we up to, man? What are you up to?
Well, I am up to my ears. We're gonna put the front brakes and the rear brakes on this chassis and get it to be a roller.
All right.
Yeah.
GSI chassis on the ground on some billet specialties.
Yep.
Which are over there. While I'm swinging, that's Alex. He's awesome. Friend of Mike's. Oh, Hazer?
Yep.
Cutie.
Also a friend of Mike's.
Also a friend of Mike's.
Not a friend of Mike's cat. So we have CPP spindles on the GSI chassis, and then we have the Willwood complete front brake kit. Comes with the hub, rotor, 6-piston caliper, and all the hardware you need to put it onto the spindle. I've already pre-assembled the spindle. We're just mocking this up right now, so there's no grease or anything in the bearings because I gotta take it all back apart, and I really don't feel like taking apart a greasy mess. So it's just mocked up. But I got the bearings in it. I got the wheel studs in here already. I got the rotor pre-assembled because it does come in 2 different pieces. There's some bolts on the back of the rotor. You gotta wire them all together to keep it from coming apart. So the kit comes with a caliper bracket that bolts onto the spindle, and then a series of shims. Probably way more shims than you'd ever use in your lifetime. I actually had to use 3 shims on each side on the bracket. So in between the bracket and the spindle, it's got 3 shims on each side of the truck right now. And then for the caliper itself, it comes with shims to go in between the bracket and the caliper in case when you put it on, the rotor, you know, is riding on the inside of the caliper. So there is shims to shim the caliper out away from the rotor. Action. So now that we got the rotor on there, use a couple lug nuts to hold it on there. Make sure you put the right rotor on the right side. It's got an arrow.
That's good to know.
What if you spin it backwards, it's on the wrong side? I'm just kidding. We're not gonna actually put the pads in here either because mocked up.
So tell the folks what size rotor that is and how many pistons that caliper is.
So this is a 13-inch rotor, according to the box. And this is a 6-piston caliper. And if you notice, our rotor is rubbing the inside of this caliper right here.
Yeah, it is.
So what we're gonna do is slide this dude back off, and we're gonna go down here to our shim pile, and we're gonna start with
A little shimmy shimmy.
2 shims, 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom.
So those attached just right on the stud.
Usually. Slide in here. Then you slide your caliper back on. Now we're out rubbing number 1. We got really good clearance. Yeah, boy.
All right, guys, just to give you an update, this is the truck, or at least the body, that is going on this chassis. So if you'll remember in the first episode of this series, we basically introduced you to this GSI chassis. So this thing will lay flat out on the ground. You can put 24, 15s back here. It's got all the inboard 4-link. It's got a Watts link, 9-inch fuel cell in the rear, inner frame stiffener, and all the GSI goodies up front. Ride Tech shocks. And one of my favorite parts that GSI has been putting on their stuff and their control arms, etc., is that cool little riveted tab right there. All right, so these are the wheels and tires that are going on this chassis and on this truck. Mike, before you roll that thing all the way over there, tell the folks at home, and Hazer, what's up? Hazer or Hazer? Hazer. It's so hard for me to remember. Mike, tell us what these wheels are.
So these are Billet Specialties sweeps. Running some good old Toyo rubber.
Sweet.
Some 265, 35, R22s, of course.
What size is that in the front?
22 by 9 in the front.
What are we gonna have in the rear?
22 by 12.
We'll show you those in just a minute.
So now that we have the fronts all done, we're going to move on to the rear. And for the rear, we'll have pretty much the same thing as the front. We're going to have a rotor, and then we have a hub. And this hub on the rear is going to actually house the parking brake. But since how we're laying frame, we just took all the parking brake stuff off, and we're not going to use it because you just lay the truck out and they don't go nowhere. So then you have your 4-piston caliper, your pads, your brackets. I've already shimmed this bracket. I've already assembled this, so I already have the proper amount of shims to space the bracket away from the caliper or the rotor, and I already have the shims to space the caliper off the rotor. So these are already, as you can see, the shims are already installed in the bracket for the caliper and the rotor spacing. You want to have 80 thousandths worth of clearance between this caliper and the rotor per the instruction manual. I've already got the backing plate installed on the axle, so we can go check that out, and we'll go over that real quick.
And remind us what kit this is again?
This is a Willwood 13-inch rotor kit for a Ford 9-inch with the 4-piston caliper.
Sweet.
I think they make a regular 2-piston caliper kit also. So this is a Curry axle. So on most Curry axles, the retaining clip here in front of or behind this backing plate, whatever you want to say, is a full clip. There's no slot cut in it, so you can put the clip on and off. So once you put the bearing and everything on the axle, this clip is on all the time. The Willwood brakes also comes with its own clip. You know, obviously we don't have to use that because we already have this one. But all these mounting points and everything on here are for the pads for the e-brake, which is all gone. That's what the slot for and all that stuff. We took all that off, so basically we just have the backing plate for the caliper. And then the rotor slides on here. There is a hub-centric ring that goes on the axle, which is right here. That centers the rotor up, so you don't have any slop, no matter what size wheel stud you have in it or anything like that. You gotta make sure that's in there, otherwise that rotor's gonna wobble all over the place and make a mess. So we'll put the caliper bracket on and put the rotor back on here, and then put the caliper back on, and then we'll slide the wheel back on.
Ooh, let's do it.
So in the instructions, it shows you how to put this washer stack and spacer together. I don't know why they want you to put the spacer in between the caliper bracket and this other spacer on this side instead of this side, but that's the way the instructions show, so that's the way I did it. And then there's like 3 washers stacked in here. So what we'll do is get these bolts started on here. Little Allen wrencho. Again, this is all going to get blown apart for powder coat, so we're not worrying about using any locks or anything like that. Put the rotor on, and remember, these are safety wired in the back. What you do is you put Loctite on here, and then safety wire them all together. Similar to what that is. This is my first time safety wiring something, so don't hog on me too hard.
Don't beat him up in the comments.
Goes on like that. Grab a couple lug nuts.
Man, that thing looks clean.
So then we have the spacer, the shim back here on the bracket. which is this little washer looking thing. The kit comes with like 1 million of these, so I think on every single caliper we've only had to use one spacer, so you know, probably everybody's gonna be different or whatever, so yeah. So we've got the spacers on there. Another thing you gotta kinda watch out for with this kit, so you have this little washer that goes on here, but you'll notice with these nuts, these are kind of like a stover nut design where you'll see the nut is not round, it's kind of oblonged. Like they squish it so that way there's kind of an interference on the nut when you put it on. But if anybody's ever used a stover nut before, you know that these things have a chance of like welding themselves to these threads. I would encourage you to get some different nuts if you're gonna mock this up, because if you run these on and off a whole bunch of times, it will take the threads off. I guarantee it. So we're just gonna put these on loosely, just to, you know, for demonstration purposes. Yeah. So everything fits. This rear end has a full spool in it, and the other tire's on the ground, so I can't really spin it because, you know, that thing. But I promise you, it's all clearing. Like you can see on this tire over here, if you pull out that center pin, you could pull the brake pads right out and replace the brake pads. You ain't got to take the caliper off or nothing.
Oh man, that's rad.
On this, you probably don't even pull the tire off. You can just pull them all off and change them.
Yeah, that's awesome. Can't wait to show them what it looks like on the other side. GSI, of course. Brake line tech time.
So Whitwood offers a series of different universal type brake lines to go from frame to caliper, or you know, suspension to caliper, whatever you got going on. So we have 3 different kits I just happen to have. Like this would be like a rear type setup maybe, to where you have the fitting that goes in the caliper, which is a pipe thread to like a -3 type fitting, JIC fitting, and then you have the JIC to brake line adapter that would adapt to a inverted flare, and then you'd have a clip that would hold it onto like your retainer on your stock vehicle. We don't have that retainer on this vehicle because obviously it's not stock. In this kit here, you see the bracket that you could use to retain the brake line. So you would put the JIC fitting into one end of this and then clip it into there, and then you'd in turn bolt that bracket onto your frame or wherever. I don't know exactly how many of these kits they have, but they have like a 20, a 24, and a 28-inch length, and you could pretty much get them almost any length you want. And there's stainless steel braided brake hoses in a number 3 AN, and you can get these on like Summer Racing or anywhere else. And in the instruction manual for the brake kits that we just installed, they have these part numbers listed on the back of here in the instruction manual, so you can reference that to what brake line kit you may or may not need. Or none of this stuff might work for you, and you might just need to, you know, source your own, you know, flexible line, because you cannot run a hard line off your axle to the caliper, because that caliper is going to move and eventually it's going to leak. So you're going to need some type of either a stainless nylon hose or some kind of rubber hose in between the caliper and the hard mounted line, because otherwise it will eventually fatigue and break and leak and cause a host of problems. I wouldn't say super cheap, but
relatively speaking.
Yeah, I think each one of these is like somewhere in the neighborhood of $60.
Yep.
see that we have the motor installed. This motor was built by Cleveland Engines here in Cleveland, Georgia. They started with a dart block. I believe it was a 6.2 LS block. We're running PRC heads, scat rotating assembly, pistons, rods, all that stuff. Stroke to a 7.0, Holley EFI, intake, injectors. We're running a Holley Terminator X fuel injection system on it for the control portion of it. We're running the March Revolver front rotor kit on it, 325 amp alternator, power steering, air conditioning. We're gonna have Texas Speed billet valve covers on it. So these are Texas Speed's billet valve covers. Currently right now, because of COVID, these are probably the only set of Texas Speed billet valve covers in the country. As you can tell, we ended up with them on accident. We were supposed to get black valve covers. We got one bald eagle cover, which is very nice.
Cletus likes them, right?
Yeah, Cletus loves them. And then we got one Australian valve cover, which I'm a fan of.
Yeah, I think they're both awesome, actually.
I'm in it to win it with these valve covers. But sad to say, it just doesn't fit.
Maybe it doesn't fit with this truck.
Yeah. So, even though I tried to talk the dude into running them anyways, he wasn't having it. So we're gonna have to have these stripped in powder coated black. Yeah, so these are the only ones we could get. And I gotta have them blasted and powder coated. So yeah, I'd love to have these on my truck.
One day.
Someday.
Someday.
So Texas Speed, if you got another set. And we're also gonna have some really super cool headers for this thing from a company up in Ohio called Ultimate Headers. And they're super trick, very nice looking headers. We'll have to make the custom intake, obviously, when the truck is done. Transmission is a 4L80 built to hold 800 horsepower. Hopefully the motor is around 7. We're gonna go with 700 NA. It was built by a company called Neal Racing Transmissions. They're over on the east side of Atlanta. Fully powder coated, the pan's powder coated silver. It's a really nice transmission. That guy really killed it on the trans. It's a little dusty now from sitting here, but we had a custom made torque converter from a company up in New York whose name escapes me.
We know what stalls in it?
I wanna say it's like a 3200.
Yeah, that sounds
Something
close.
Beefy.
Yeah.
So yeah, custom made billet torque converter. We're gonna have billet flywheel. That should about do it as far as the motor and transmission package.
Cue the music.